Hey everyone, Liz from the Nail Hub here, and I am back to continue our discussion about service prices. Last time we talked about the four main components that go into developing an actual price for a business, and I know a lot of you were interested in that because we tend to fixate on the production cost portion, which is just how much our actual service products and the things that we use during a service cost us. But we forget to add in all of the other components, and we forget to do a lot of competitive analysis and market analysis to see if the price that we come up even is going to fly in the market that we work in. So I wanted to actually go over today how I would organize that information. I made a very simplistic Excel spreadsheet on Google Sheets. I'll provide the link to you below this video if you'd like to download it and you'd like to use it as the basis for your particular business. I'm going to go through everything with you in detail, and we'll discuss kind of how you start to develop these answers to these really important questions. Okay, so here is my little Google Sheet that I have created. I like using Google Sheets because that way you don't have to have Excel or anything downloaded on an actual computer. You can use your mobile phone to use Google Sheets, and it's also a free service. So you can save all of your stuff under your Google profile and keep all of this documentation organized for you. It's also really easy to update it as well, okay? So what I did here is I wanted to include the four different tabs based on the components that we talked about. So we talked about competitor list, we talked about service demand, making sure that the services that we're wanting to offer are actually in demand in our particular local market. We talked about overhead costs, and we also are going to talk about service costs. And these two things are different, and we need to include both of them when we're looking at this, okay? So what I did here is I made some notes about just, going through again, competitors that are truly inside of your actual peer group. So depending on the type of salon or the type of nail technician you want to be and the type of business you want to be perceived as, we're going to select competitors that are on that same level, okay? So for those of you that are more niche or more specialty, I don't want you using competitors like walk-in salons because they're doing a very different business model than what you're wanting to do. Most individual nail technicians, most sole proprietors, they end up wanting to do more of a niche style business. So you're going to need to look for other competitors that are similar to who you are. And I also want you to keep the competitor list to people that are within probably a 30 to 50 mile radius at the maximum. If you live in a more rural area and people are used to driving longer distances to get services, then maybe you want to expand that to, again, that higher, 50, maybe even 60 miles. If you're within an urban area, you're going to keep that very, very close to you because most people aren't used to driving long distances in order to be able to access the kind of products and services that they're looking for. So I simplistically went through her. I would recommend you get at least 3 to 5 competitors listed here. Again, if you're in a very small rural area, maybe you're only going to have 1 or 2. If you're in a more populous area, a more metropolitan area, then maybe you're going to have something like 5 to 7 competitors that you're looking at. So I made notes here, include their real business name so you can keep track of who they are and what they're doing. You can also keep track of, sorry, typo here, keep track of where they're located. So again, if you live in a very metropolitan area or you live in an area where people are driving back and forth between different towns, write down what city or even, what little suburb that the business is located in. Talk about proximity as well. So look them up on Google Maps. Look at how close they are to you because this also makes a difference. If they're 2 blocks down, that's very different than if someone is 20 miles away. So just keep an eyeball on, what the proximity is like and how close they are to where you are wanting to set up your business. Average price is also a great benchmark for understanding how expensive a salon is. So obviously, a lot of salons will put very cheap services on the menu, polish changes, etc., which most of us never end up doing. I want you guys to think about really the meat and potatoes of that particular business. What is the service that they're famous for? What is the thing they're being posted about all the time? And you can even take a range, like if they're doing a lot of gel polish and they're also doing a lot of gel extensions, for example, or maybe they're doing acrylic nails, or maybe they're doing full coverage tips. You can take that into consideration and come up with an average price. And then also keep some notes on it. So I always recommend that you go visit your competitors. Obviously, if you know the person closely, it's going to be a little awkward if you're kind of doing secret shopper on their business. But honestly, I recommend that you go get nail services, even if it's just a pedicure. Go get your nails done by these competitors that you're considering as competition for your business. And even go do some nail services at some of the walk-in salons that aren't necessarily your same peer group, but you're concerned about what they're doing, you're concerned about how many clients are going to that business. Go actually experience what their business is like. And even if you just walk in and get an initial impression, or if you get an actual service done, write down notes about what you noticed about their business, okay? And the notes can be extensive. They can be, here's the way they represent themselves online, here's the type of stuff they're posting about on Instagram, here are some of their Yelp reviews, maybe what their rating is. You could even include another column that is like Yelp or Google rating, where you include something like, maybe they have a 3.5-star rating. Even though they seem like they're an awesome place, maybe clients are complaining about specific things, and include notes on why people are complaining about it. What's the place that this business is falling short, and how could your business potentially address those issues, okay? So it's not just about, I want to do these services and I'm going to create my own idea and my own salon. You really need to take into consideration what's already happening in your market and how your business can address some of those areas of opportunity, okay? So this is a great way to kind of start to build a list. You can customize this to what you really want to track. Again, I really created something very simplistic, but you can actually start to create more and more data points that you find meaningful, and just keep those, close to your analysis when you're looking at what you're going to be doing with your business. I also recommend that you revisit this at least once a year so that you can update these things, because if a specific competitor closes their doors or maybe another one opens, you want to also add that to your list of people that you're keeping track of or businesses that you're keeping track of. Okay, so let's talk about service demand for a second. So service demand is, feeling out what clients are wanting in your market. So we just talked about what competitors are doing and what they're offering and how successful they are at offering it. But also we want to look at, are the services that we're wanting to offer actually popular? So depending on how creative you are, or maybe you've come up with an idea, you're like, hey, I want to open up a concept that has never been done before in my area. That's all awesome, but you also have to make sure that people are willing to go to a place like that and they're willing to pay the kind of prices that you're wanting to charge. So it's not just a bottoms up approach where we're developing how much things cost us, adding on a specific percentage, and then expecting to be able to charge that. We need to also take into consideration what people are willing to pay for a given service. We can obviously push that to a different level depending on how well we offer that service and how in demand we become. But generally speaking, when we open our doors, we want to be in line with other businesses that are offering similar services, okay? So I've got 3 basic services here. Again, you could include much more here if you wanted to feel out lots of different options. I've got a basic gel polish manicure, a basic pedicure. Again, you could put more detail about what kind of pedicure you're wanting to do. Maybe you want to get into dry e-filing, kind of medical style pedicures, and then also artificial enhancements, whatever that particular product might be, whether it's liquid and powder acrylic, maybe you want to do gels, maybe you want to do full coverage gel tips, whatever that is. And then also come up with some potential price points. So you could actually have 2 columns here. You could have, your wish list price, the one that you came up with that you want to charge. And then you could also have, actual price point that people said they would be willing to pay for a given service, okay? So maybe this is, you came up with your idea of like, I want to charge, $60 for a pedicure, but when you ask people about the type of pedicure that you're wanting to offer, maybe they said they're only willing to spend $45, okay? So again, this gives you an idea of how far off you are from what the clients are expecting, and it gives you a benchmark idea of how you need to balance your service costs and all of your overhead against these prices, which we'll get into in just a second. I also recommend that you include a description for this, and you're going to use this material to talk to potential clients. It could be friends, it could be family, but again, friends and family tend to be a bad resource for a lot of reasons because they know you, they care about you, they're biased, right? So they're going to give you a very different biased response than maybe a person right off of the sidewalk. So think about going and visiting places that have the type of clientele that you want to work on. And we really need to develop an avatar of what that kind of client is. So let's say we want to be a very specialty, very kind of expensive, high-end type of salon, then we're going to want to go where those type of clients are, and we're going to want to ask them these types of questions. It is a little bit weird to do this for the first time if you've never done something like this, but I'm telling you the data that you get out of it is going to be so important. You can also glean some of this information from looking at reviews of your competitors. For example, if you see that a competitor that is in your same marketplace is offering a $55 gel polish manicure and all of their Yelp reviews are like, this is way too expensive, there's no way in hell I would pay $55 for a gel polish manicure, yada, 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 then you can also get that kind of information, even just looking at the reviews that your competitors have. Okay, so I'm just going to include a one color application with removal. I'm not going to charge extra for removal if I'm charging $55. You also want to take into consideration how much time, because if you're talking about artificial enhancements with a ton of nail art and this is your idea of what you want to offer, and let's say you're thinking, okay, it's going to take me 2 hours to offer this service. Maybe you ask someone this question and they go, are you kidding me? I would never sit still for 2 hours to get my nails done. The max I can do is an hour. Okay, so that's going to immediately kind of give you an idea of, is this type of 2-hour service really going to work well for you? And also I like to include kind of a gauge of how popular the response was. So I can say, hey, I asked 10 people, 2 out of the 10 people liked this service that I approached them with and agreed with what I came up with. Or you can also include other notes like, most thought too expensive and too long, for time, right? Just little notes here, okay? So you can add little notes for yourself so that you have an idea of what's going on. And that's also why I like Google Sheets, because you can type this in right when you're asking people. And you could even expand this where you have maybe like, customer 1, and then you have their response like yes or no, something like that, and then what their thoughts were on the price point, notes about them, all of that stuff. And so you could even expand this where you've got 10 people and all the detail behind what they said about each one of these services, okay? So you can organize it that way if you'd like to. You can also do pen and paper, write it down, and then put it into your spreadsheet when you get home or back to your business, okay? So how do you go about asking someone this? So let me just pull up my phone real quick, and I'm going to pull up a picture. Okay, so what you're going to do when I'm talking about getting this kind of data from potential clientele is you're going to go around and you're going to have a picture available on your cell phone just like this. You can have whatever the services are that you're curious about. I would organize it so they're right in a row so you can flip, between pictures. So you're going to point to a picture and you're going to go, hey, this is the gel polish manicure that I'm wanting to offer. You're going to show them a picture of a gel polish manicure that you actually did because you want to show them the level of quality that you're capable of. And this is important because if you're a beginner and you're just getting kind of better at doing gel polish manicures, none of us are born as these amazing award-winning nail technicians. It takes time for us to hone our skill set, and it's perfectly acceptable. So what I want you to do is give a client or a potential client an honest opportunity to review your work. And I want you to do this because I also want you to time yourself when you do these services. You should be practicing your services and timing yourself so that you truly know how long it takes you to do a specific service. So let's say I did these nails and it took me 50 minutes to do this particular gel polish manicure for this person, whether it's a friend, a family member, maybe it's an existing client, and I charged this person $55. Maybe they tipped me, maybe they didn't, whatever the case might be, or maybe I'm just coming up with a price out of thin air. So I'm going to go around to people and I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that you have your nails done and I was just curious, could I ask you about your opinion on how much you would charge for a given service? And most people will be like, sure, and it's also an opportunity to promote yourself and possibly win over a potential client, which is really important when we're talking about finding those type of people. So I recommend, as you do this exercise, go up to people that look like the kind of clients that you would like to work on, right? Maybe they're they dress like you, maybe they're shopping in the same kind of stores that you shop in, or again, if you're going to be a very expensive salon, then go to places that are more expensive, like maybe it's a nice department store, maybe it's a specialty grocery store, like a Whole Foods, or like, some kind of really fancy place. You could go up to people in the grocery store. Most people when they're shopping at the grocery store are happy to talk. And you can show them this picture and be like, hey, I'm curious, what would you charge, or sorry, what would you pay for these nails if you were going to get this service done? And the person might go, oh, those are nice. And they might look at it closer and they go, I'd probably pay something like $50 for that, given their experience. Okay, great. And how long would you assume that it would take to get this service done? Or how long would you be willing to sit in the chair to get nails that look just like this? Right? So they're willing to pay $50. Now they're going to tell you, I'm used to sitting for nail appointments that take about an hour, and they might give you more detail, like anything beyond an hour ends up being, way beyond what I'm willing to do, or I start to get antsy. And again, you can find this information from reviews of other businesses as well. They might say things like, oh my gosh, this salon took forever for a basic service. It took me, 90 minutes for a gel polish manicure. Clue into that, because that tells you also information about where your business could come into play. If you're able to offer the same service in 50 minutes instead of 90 minutes, you're in business for being able to take advantage of that opportunity, okay? So show people real pictures of the services on your cell phone and ask them this information. And then again, write down what their response was. You don't have to ask anything about them, their name or anything like that, but if you strike up conversation and they go, oh, did you do those nails? Oh, are you a nail technician? Oh my gosh, I'm looking for someone to do my nail, blah, blah, blah. Have a business card ready, or maybe even book them on the spot and say, hey, I've got an opening on Wednesday afternoon, or whatever the case might be. Book them up right then. You just got yourself a client, okay? So this is a really cool opportunity to not only get information, but to also seek out potential clientele, especially if you're just getting started, or even if you're wanting to revamp the kind of services that you're providing and you want to evolve into a slightly different business. Or maybe you're wanting to raise your prices and you're worried about, who's going to replace the clients that potentially leave you. All of this is an opportunity, okay? So very, very cool. Okay, so now we've got all of our notes on what people are willing to spend, how long they're willing to sit in the chair, are they interested in the kind of services that we're wanting to offer? And now we're going to take all that information and we're going to align it with the overhead and the service costs, okay? So overhead, I consider not just big overhead items. Typical overhead things are things like long-term expenditures that don't fluctuate with what you're doing in your business. Okay, so for an example, rent is something that typically doesn't fluctuate depending on how much business you are or are not doing. It's a fixed cost that you have to pay for based on the contract that you sign up for. So let's say you rent a salon suite and it costs you $1,700 for that salon suite. Or maybe this is a portion of your mortgage that you're assigning to your little at-home nail salon. Or maybe it's a booth, rental cost or something like that you pay monthly, whatever the case might be. And this number could be whatever the actual number is. But rent is something that is going to be a fixed cost for you. You have to pay it every month, even if you didn't work on a single person, okay? And I've got several costs here. All of them are going to be different depending on how you're set up. But even if you work at home, even if you live in a state where they allow you to do services in your home, I want you to include a portion of your home as a percentage for your actual salon, okay? So let's say you take up a room inside of your house, and let's say that room is, square footage wise, let's say that room is 15% of your total square footage of your home, okay? Just as an example. And let's say your home costs you, whatever it is, your mortgage, your insurance, your utilities, all of those things. I want you to ascribe 15% of those expenses to your actual home salon. Your home salon isn't free, even though it's something that you're already paying for. I want you to ascribe those expenditures to your actual portion of your home. Because number one, it can be a business write-off when you do your taxes. And number two, if you ever decide to move out of your home into an actual, different location, you already know what expenses you can already afford based on the services that you're providing. Okay, so just because you work at home or you're starting out there doesn't mean it's free. I want you to still ascribe that percentage of your expenses to what it would be if you were operating a business, okay? And do it based on a percentage of total square footage. And this is a great metric because you can use this with your accountant, or even if you do your own TurboTax or whatever the case might be, you can absolutely use the percentage of your home that you're using for your business as the write-off at the end of the year for what your actual expenditures were, okay? All right, so rent here. Then we have things like insurance. So if you have professional liability insurance, or even if you have business insurance or anything like that, include your insurance here. Phone, you're going to need to either use your cell phone or a landline or however you're doing to accept appointments. If you're using your cell phone, which most people do, then I want you to assign a portion of that expense to your cell phone, or even put your whole cell phone on as the thing that you're using for your business. Okay, so your monthly cell phone bill. Utilities, if you have to pay for utilities at the place that you're renting, or again, ascribe a certain percentage of your home utilities to the space that you're using to do at home appointments. You also have licenses and fees that you usually have to pay for. So whether that be your manicuring license or your facility license or whatever is required by your state, I want you to include the monthly portion of your license. So let's say you pay something like $70 a year, or whatever the case might be, then I want you to divide that by 12 and come up with a monthly cost. And any of these that are paid annually, you can absolutely do that. Or if you pay something every 3 months or 6 months or whatever the case might be, divide it and make sure that it's a monthly cost, because it keeps everything aligned. Marketing and advertising. So maybe you're doing some Yelp ads, or maybe you're putting yourself in, a yellow page section or something like that. I do find that the best marketing and advertising is word of mouth. And so even this could be business cards that you're giving your clients to encourage them to recommend people for you and refer people. And we'll get into how you can get clients to actually build clientele for you in a future video. But definitely include whatever you're spending on marketing, advertising, whether it be little handouts or business cards or any promotional items that you do. Maybe it's customized nail files. All of that would be something that is marketing and advertising. Transportation. So transportation, most of you are probably having to drive to and from where you work out of. And I also want you to include, how much you're spending on gas, how much you're spending on your car. Now, you can do this from an accounting perspective. You can do it mileage based. You can do it as a percentage of how much time you're using your car for work if you're self-employed, stuff like that. But I want you to include some kind of cost, even if you take the bus to work, whatever the case might be. I want you to include your transportation expenditures, even if it's not something you can write off from a tax perspective. I still want you guys to consider this as an expense for you being able to do business, okay? Basic salon supplies. So this would not be gels or things that are more consumable and fluctuate more with how many services you're doing. A lot of times we have to buy things in bulk just to have them available for the salon. So this would be things like big jugs of isopropyl alcohol, acetone, maybe spa towels, things that are kind of consumables, but are things that you don't really change how much you order drastically if you did 5 services versus 7. At the end of the day, you're going to need to do some monthly ordering for supplies. And depending on how familiar you are with what those monthly expenditures are going to be, you could even expand slightly more consumable things like nail files. If you're buying your nail files in bulk and you know that many nail files covers you for the entire month, you could even add this on as a basic salon supply expense. Equipment. So if you're buying, maybe you bought a new pedicure bowl, or you have a different stool or something. Again, I want you to just kind of consider, even if it's equipment like long-term use equipment, like nippers or cuticle pushers that aren't really consumed during an actual appointment, you could include anything like that that's used more long-term, but you do need to replace once in a while. You could figure out, hey, I typically spend something like $50, could even be just for sharpening your implements. But whatever that cost is, I want you guys to also include maybe even the maintenance fees for your equipment. Maybe even your autoclave needs some regular maintenance, if you have one. However, it works for your business. I want you to include some kind of equipment expense. And then we're going to probably have some kind of booking software. So there's tons of different options for salon software. But you can also put this as, maybe it's your fees that you pay for Square or, Clover or whatever you use to do your credit card transactions. Whatever you do for your hosting for your website, if you have anything like that. So you could customize this to be separate where you've got, website expenses or something like that. But salon software is usually, booking software is typically a monthly expense. So I want you to include that. Okay. So then we're going to come up with a monthly total. This is going to be different for everybody depending on where you are. But I want you guys to understand monthly what you're on the hook for. Even if you don't see a single client, I want you to understand kind of what that expense is. And again, even if you operate out of your house and you have the benefit of, maybe your mortgage is already taken care of by your partner's job or whatever, I still want you to consider those expenses as part of running a business, because if you want to expand later, you're going to have all this information at your disposal. Okay, last but not least, which this is the part that we usually get very hung up on, and this is usually the part that most manufacturers will provide information for you. Sometimes manufacturers have a little spreadsheet or something that they've already got a service cost that they have calculated for you. This is the service cost or the production cost portion, okay? So we have a gel polish manicure, because typically gel polish manicures tend to be a major meat and potatoes service when it comes to operating our businesses. So I always like to include gel polish manicures, is that 60% of my business is probably going to be something like that. Maybe it's pedicures, maybe it's enhancements, maybe it's regular nail polish manicures, but whatever that really popular service is going to be for you, I want you to start there, okay? So let's walk through this. I've got products that I'm going to use, and the way you figure this out is sheerly doing an appointment on somebody. Set yourself up, whether it's a family member or a friend, if you haven't even started your business yet, or maybe you already have been running a business. I want you to really go through in detail and notice exactly what you use on these services. A lot of us, we think we know what we use until we really start writing it down. And we're shocked by, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I go through, a whole bunch of buffers or nail files or whatever the case might be during each service. So we've got some different things here. We've got base gel, color gel, we have top coat, cuticle oil, lotion, foil wraps, nail file, buffer, cotton wipes, acetone, alcohol or cleanser, table towels, like the disposable kind of ones. Anything that you use that's a more consumable product, I want you to write it down. It could be orange wood sticks. It could be, whatever the case might be, paper towels, anything like that that is a true kind of throwaway item and something that you're absolutely going to use a certain amount during a given service. I want you to write that particular product down. The way we truly figure out how much we're using in a given service when it comes to specific products is we need to weigh our products, okay? So I have shown this before several times, and I unfortunately don't have my little scale handy. But what you want to look for is a little scale. You can get them on Amazon. I'll include a link below this video to an example if you want to take a look at what I'm talking about, and if you want, a referral to a specific one. You just want a little scale that is sensitive enough to weigh fractions of a gram or fractions of an ounce, because we need it to be pretty dang sensitive, because if we're using something like top coat, and you can imagine like one sheer layer of top coat, the weight difference between before and after use is going to be very slight, and so we need to have a sensitive scale so that it will be able to tell us very small changes in our product. So we're going to weigh our products before we start the service. You can weigh them right in the bottle. It doesn't matter, because we're going to take that bottle and product weight into consideration. And let's say I have a pretty brand new bottle of base gel. It weighs 14.5, grams, or you can change this to ounces if you feel more comfortable. I literally made up numbers for this spreadsheet. I didn't actually weigh anything, but it worked out where the math actually is very close to what I have seen. So let's say, you've got a 15 milliliter bottle, and, typically grams and milliliters are equivalent. Obviously grams, takes into more of kind of a mass thing. But you can basically get a gram weight, and I do recommend metric for these things, even though in the US we're not used to it. It's a lot easier to convert milliliters into grams than it is to do like ounces to grams and all of this different stuff. So I've got a brand new bottle of base gel, practically new bottle of base gel. It weighs 14.5 grams before I start the service. After I use it, I've got 14 grams left. When I weigh the same bottle again, same exact situation. After the service, I've used 0.5 grams on that appointment. And this tells me what my actual use is. So you're going to repeat this exercise for every single product that you use. It's great to get an idea of that. There's going to be products that don't really have a weight, right? We're just using individual units of them. So if I'm doing removal on a client, they have 10 fingers, unless they're lucky and they have extra ones. So I'm going to use 10 foil wraps, and I'm going to use probably one nail file, one buffer. Maybe I use, 5 different wipes depending on, where I am in the service. if I'm prepping nails, if I'm cleansing them after they're cured. And same thing with your acetone, your alcohol, and then I'll probably use one disposable table towel. Maybe you like to use two. So these numbers are going to vary based on what you do. Then we're going to also look at what an actual brand new bottle of gel or package of wraps or whatever it is, what that contains, right? So a brand new bottle of gel has 15 milliliters in it typically, which is half an ounce. That's the normal standard size for most of the products we come across in our industry. Could be smaller, could be bigger, could be potted instead of a bottle, so it might be different. So we're going to put the brand new what's marked on the actual bottle. And then we can figure out how many uses are in each bottle or jar or package or whatever based on how much we use. So what I'm doing here is I'm just taking the total volume available to me when I get a brand new bottle divided by my use, and that gives me how much I use out of a given bottle. So it tells me how many appointments I can do out of a given bottle or jar or package, anything like that. So I can get 30 services out of 1/2 ounce jar or bottle of base gel. Okay, so this is really good information. And then also, how much does that brand new bottle of gel cost me? Maybe it's a $20 base gel. And so then based on how many appointments I can do with that, I'm going to take that $20 and divide it by the amount of uses I particularly get out of that particular product. And it's going to cost me 67 cents per appointment. Okay, so basically I'm just saying, hey, it's $20 for a brand new bottle. I'm able to use it across 30 different people, so I'm paying $67 per customer, okay? And this is why product really should be an investment in your business. It is a return on investment that you get by charging the correct price. This is one of the biggest areas that I think a lot of nail technicians struggle is they start out buying premium products like a $20 base gel because they want to provide high quality, they want to provide safe, amazing products. However, they're not charging appropriately. So after a few months, now they're buying something that's $7.95 and hoping that that's going to fix their problems. Okay, so rather than sacrificing on the quality that you want to provide, you can try to incorporate these expenses into what you're doing and how you're setting up your business structure. So this goes down the list with all of the different products, and I left space here so that any of you can fill in more expenses. This is a total that goes all the way down to this line. So if you want to add more lines, you can just go somewhere in the middle, right click and say insert 10 rows above, whatever the case might be, and add more if you need more space. So here I've got the total cost of all the consumable products that I'm going to use in an appointment. So I'm already needing to cover almost $10 per person just for the consumable products that I use in a service, okay? Now let's talk about how that overhead comes into play. Let's say I can only do, or I'm only doing about 100 services a month. This is based on 5 clients per day, 5 days a week, right? And so that's 25 people a week that I'm working on, so 100 clients per month that I'm working on. And if I am doing 100 services per month, I'm going to take this overhead cost, $27.52, and I'm going to divide it by that same 100 people. So this is taking that overhead total per month, dividing it by how many services I'm doing per month, and it gives me the total daily overhead that I need to fixate on. Now, I can even go further down, and I can do this divided by how many actual clients I do per day. But this is also something that's, if you're only doing one person, or if you're looking at just even what you would need to cover, if you went to go turn on the lights to do a Sunday service for someone, this is basically what your daily overhead would be, okay? So I can also do this, distill it down a little bit further, and then I can get my actual per client overhead, okay? Something like that, okay? So then what I can do is I can add these two costs together, and that gets me what my total cost per service is. So if I'm ascribing, this percentage, one person worth of expense to, one person worth of expense to my overhead, then I can actually take a look at what my total cost is for that one service, if that was what I was doing. And then I can include the price that I want to charge. Now, this price, again, if you remember from my service demand, I have a wish list price here, But based on what clientele told me, maybe this wish list price is actually going to be more like $50. So my wish list price, maybe I can build to that, but maybe truly what I'm going to be able to get away with is something like $50. Especially if you're just wanting to be in line with your competition, you're not wanting to be more expensive in the beginning because maybe you're still starting out. I don't want you to discount your prices. If you're a beginner, you're just opening, maybe you're not as great of a nail technician as you would like to be yet because you haven't had a ton of experience. I don't want you to say, okay, I'm only going to charge $35 because I'm not as good as everybody else. That isn't going to help you because you still need to eventually get to $55, and $20 in price changes is actually a very long way to go. So I still want you to be in line with your competition. You could be a teeny bit cheaper if you want to, maybe $3 to $5 cheaper, but I want you to be pretty well in line because your experience and your skill set is going to improve, and I don't want you to be struggling to build up to the prices that you actually want to charge. And it's the same issue I see with things like Groupons or anything where it's an introductory price. It is almost impossible to get someone to pay full price after they've already gotten a discount on the first time, okay? There's a few people that will do it, but most clients end up being discount shoppers. They end up looking for places, they're a first-time person everywhere because they're not willing to pay full price, so they look for places that offer introductory discounts. And most of the time when they realize, oh my gosh, I've got to pay $20 more when I come back, most people say no to that. So don't set yourself up for failure with that, okay? So let's just say that again, per person, I'm doing 100 people a month. So, each appointment that I'm doing is costing me, right, per client overhead. Sorry, this isn't really daily. If it was daily, I'd be taking that monthly divided by 30, not divided by 100 people. Okay, so my per client overhead is $27.52. And again, remember, we're not scalable businesses as nail technicians. We can only do so many people a day, so many people a week. So if we're able to charge $50 for this service, we are making $13.21, okay? And let's say this is a 50-minute service. And I didn't include salary, if you remember, in my overhead. I did not include salary in here for you. You could include that if you wanted to, like what's the goal that you want to make, per month in order to work. That's also another important expense there is paying yourself. But if you think about this, at $50 with the overhead that I'm calculating right now, I'm only going to be making approximately $13 an hour as a nail technician. Now, maybe you get tips on top of that, whatever. Maybe you get $5 in tips on top of that, but you're only making $18.21 an hour if you're set up this way. So what this tells me is I either need to figure out how to increase the price, which people have already told me what they're willing to pay, right? And this is where this whole grabbing prices off the internet doesn't really work. Because if people are telling me they're only willing to pay $50, it's going to be extremely difficult. If I go, oh, I want to charge $65 because I want to make $30 an hour, no one's going to be willing to pay for that, right? So I have to be close. I can push it a little bit. I could do 53, maybe I could do 54, maybe 55. But honestly, at the end of the day, you're going to be stuck with what clients told you they're willing to pay. So I have to go back to the drawing board and I have to look at how can I adjust my overhead or how can I adjust my actual service cost to get this better in line. All right. And I usually do recommend, if you're looking for general benchmarks, you're going to want to be able to charge something like $1 a minute for a given service. So this is pretty dang close. If this is a 50-minute service, then $50 is pretty dang close to what you should be charging, even in a rural area, a more metropolitan area. Doesn't really matter. All of the analysis that I've done across tons of different salons tells me that a good benchmark is $1 a minute. And this is also helpful for something that maybe like nail art or something that you're not quite sure exactly what you're going to end up doing. You can do things like that where you just in your head think of, oh, I'm going to charge, $1 a minute, right? Just to get an idea. But I want you guys to start to really absorb this. I know sometimes it can be very overwhelming when you're looking at this for the first time and there's so much detail in it that you're like, oh my gosh, how do I even wrap my head around, getting all of these things organized? But if you really sit down and you make this part of your strategy and you actually include these ideas and these kind of metrics in when you're developing these service prices, it's going to really help you. And again, maybe you're not willing to make trade-offs on the quality of products. Maybe you really want to use a very expensive product because you believe in it, right? And that's kind of the situation I was in when I first started. You know, I knew I didn't want to use cheapo stuff. I wanted to use the good stuff. I wanted to align myself with manufacturers that were making high quality products, that cared about what was in their products. I wanted to be that kind of nail technician that was viewed as using the creme de la creme on my clients because I cared about what I was putting on them. And so because of that, I had to make sure that my whole salon and my whole business and all of my pricing structure and everything that I permeated about my business was that level so that people really got value out of what I was providing, and the perception of me and my business and the services I was providing and the excellent skills that I had and I worked towards, which I didn't have in the beginning, but quickly I worked on it, and I really strived to get to that point where what I was asking people to pay was well in line with the type of business I was. And so you might be kind of sacrificing that hourly pay in the beginning, but at least you're covering all of your expenses, right? I mean, honestly, even if you're making $15 an hour, $13 an hour, at least one, you're doing a job that you love. Two, you're covering all of your expenses, right? You know that your business is actually able to stay in business, and it's just a matter of what you're actually paying yourself. And if you've already got someone else who's helping you out getting started, maybe you've got a partner, maybe you've got family, whatever the case might be, if you're able to do that and then build upwards from there, that at least is a great starting point because you know you're not losing money. And most analysis that I do for salons and nail technicians, the numbers I come up with is that they're losing money. They're not able to pay themselves, and on top of that, they're not even covering their business expenses. They're having to dip into savings. They're having to ask family for extra money to be able to pay for that month's worth of expenses. And that's why we have this issue in the professional industry where people typically come into the industry, try their best, they don't have a lot of guidance on these things, and within 2 to 3 years, they have to leave and go get a real job because they can't make it happen. So this is the kind of stuff that allows you to make it happen and makes it happen long term. And I want you guys to do this analysis for yourself. If you have any questions about anything, please comment below the video. I'm happy to help you with specific things, specific questions that you might have, but this is a great starting point for you, at least to wrap your head around what are you spending? What are you doing in your current business? Or if you're wanting to open a new business, maybe you're a student, maybe you're just getting started, I want you to really sit down and do this kind of analysis, and I want you to go ask people what they're willing to spend and if they're even interested in the services that you're wanting to do, okay? Again, we don't need that many people. We need 100 people a month, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, if you had 100 people a month in the, dollar a minute type of range for the type of time you're spending on them, in general, you're going to be in good shape, okay? Same thing goes for nail art. The best way to align yourself for nail art expenses, a lot of you have been asking me about that. $1 a minute is a great benchmark for that, but also there's a limit to it, right? If it takes you an hour to hand draw a design, most people aren't going to pay you $60 for nail art. Some might, but most people probably aren't interested. So what I recommend is instead of just having it be this open-ended thing, I recommend that maybe seasonally you come up with, let's say, 3 nail art designs if that's what you really enjoy doing. I want you to practice the nail art. I want you to do it on some demonstrative tips. I want you to put it on a little frame or have some pictures or whatever the case might be. You're going to know how much time it takes you because you're going to have practiced it multiple times. You're not going to be trying to do nail art on the fly. You're going to be able to direct clientele to that nail art that you've already prepared, so you're not having to, again, have people come in with random pictures that you're trying to figure out how you're going to do that for them. You need to do some kind of, just like when you go to a restaurant and they tell you what the specials are because they're trying to kind of gear you into ordering something specific or they make specific recommendations, you're going to do that too. And you're going to be guiding people into a service that you've already practiced, you already know how much it costs, you already know how much time it takes, and the person is going to then know how much it's going to cost them. So the alignment happens where they know how much to expect to pay, and you know that you're actually covering all of your bases when it comes to charging for nail art, and you're able to do something that you enjoy and you think is fun, okay? If you leave it open-ended, most of the time people are just going to come up with their own ideas off of Pinterest or whatever. You're going to be forced to try and copy someone else's design or come up with some kind of, derivative of it on the fly. And most of the time, it's really hard to align pricing. You're going to feel pressured. You're going to probably not charge enough. You're probably going to take too long. And so this kind of on the fly thing doesn't work, right? So we really want to have everything dialed in when we're talking about time, service prices, and setting expectations with our clientele. So I hope all this really helps. We're going to be digging deeper into this. We're going to even be going into, again, how do you find clients? If you're wanting to raise your prices, how do you find the clients that are going to replace them? How do you get this kind of well-oiled machine that just automatically just grinds? That's what we really want as nail technicians, is we just want things to flow. We just want to know exactly what our strategy is. We want to show up, be able to churn and burn, and make the kind of money that we want to make. So this is a great place to start for you to understand, are you covering your expenses or not? And how much are you actually making per hour? All right. So let me know what you think. I'll be in touch again next time. Bye.